I didn't realize I was being followed until my headlights caught something standing in the middle of the road. It was already too late by then. The police report would later say there was no evidence of anyone else involved. No footprints. No surveillance footage. No signs of another vehicle on the highway. Just my car, pulled over on the shoulder at 2:47 a.m., engine still running, driver door wide open. And me. Shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone. What haunts me isn't what I saw that night. It's what disappeared afterward. Because whatever happened during that drive didn't leave proof. It left gaps. Lost minutes. Missing audio recordings. A stretch of highway that still makes my chest tighten every time I pass it. And I'm not the only one. Over the last few years, 3 separate drivers reported nearly identical experiences on isolated roads across different states. Same time window. Same sudden vehicle failure. Same feeling of pressure in the air. Same unexplainable marks found on their cars afterward. Police called it coincidence. They always do. But coincidences don't breathe next to your ear. They don't shut off your engine without touching it. And they don't leave hand-shaped frost patterns on warm glass. I'm telling this now because people think night driving is peaceful. Calming. Therapeutic. They put on music, set cruise control, and let the road stretch endlessly in front of them. They don't think about how vulnerable you are at 60 miles an hour in complete darkness. They don't think about what can move between the trees while you're focused on taillights. They don't think about how easy it is for something to step into your lane when there's no one around to witness it. The first sign something had gone wrong wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. My GPS froze. The time on my dashboard stopped updating. And the radio started cycling through empty stations. Static. Breathing. Then silence. I told myself I was tired. That long drives mess with your senses. That being alone at night makes your imagination louder. But that excuse stopped working the moment my rearview mirror stopped reflecting what was behind me. Instead of the road, I saw darkness. Deep, warped darkness that didn't match the headlights. And in that darkness, something moved. I hit the brakes. The car slowed. The road was empty. No figure. No obstruction. Nothing. But my heart didn't get the memo. It pounded like it was trying to escape my ribcage. I pulled over. That was my first mistake. Because once you stop moving, you become reachable. The second mistake was opening my door. I wanted air. I wanted to wake myself up. I wanted proof that I was still in control of the situation. Cold rushed in. Too cold for summer. The smell of wet leaves filled my lungs even though I was miles from any forest. And somewhere behind me, just beyond the range of my headlights, something shifted its weight. I felt it before I heard it. That heavy sensation. That sense of being watched from multiple directions at once. I called 911. The line connected. But all I could hear was static. Then a voice that sounded like mine whispered my name. That's when I understood. This wasn't a bad night drive. This was something else. Something that had been waiting for a car to slow down. Something police still can't explain. And if you've ever driven alone after midnight, you might already know exactly what I'm talking about. Before any of that happened, my life was quiet. Predictable in the best way. My name is Daniel, and at the time, I was 29 years old, working as a field technician for a telecommunications company in northern Arizona. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I didn't mind the long drives. Most days, my job involved visiting rural cell towers or small relay stations scattered across miles of desert highways and empty backroads. That night was supposed to be routine. It was a Tuesday in early September, and I'd just wrapped up a late service call outside Flagstaff. One of the towers had been throwing signal errors all afternoon, and by the time I finished running diagnostics, the sun was already sinking behind the hills. My GPS said I had about a 2-hour drive home. Nothing unusual. I stopped at a gas station off Route 89 to fill up, grabbed a bottled coffee and a sandwich, and used the restroom before getting back on the road. The cashier wished me a safe drive. I thanked her, climbed into my car, and queued up a podcast I'd been halfway through. The air was warm but comfortable, windows cracked just enough to let the desert breeze in. My headlights cut clean paths through the darkness as I merged back onto the highway. I actually remember feeling peaceful. There's something calming about night driving when everything else goes quiet. No traffic. No deadlines. Just you, the road, and the soft hum of tires on pavement. My mind drifted to normal things, what I'd make for dinner, whether I'd hit the gym in the morning, how I still needed to call my sister back. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't tired. I definitely wasn't scared. The dashboard clock read 11:38 p.m. The sky was clear, scattered with stars, and the moon hung low over the distant ridgelines. Every so often, a reflective road sign flashed past or a lone semi-truck thundered in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it was just empty highway. I adjusted my seat, took a sip of coffee, and settled into cruise control at 65. This wasn't my first late drive. It wasn't even my 10th. I'd done this route dozens of times before. I knew where the curves were, where cell service dropped for a few miles, where the road narrowed briefly near an old rest stop that nobody used anymore. It felt familiar. Safe. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a job that let me see so much open country. How some people paid money for road trips like this, while I got paid to do it. The podcast played softly as I drove, voices filling the car, keeping me company. My headlights carved tunnels through the dark, illuminating brush and desert rock on either side of the asphalt. Everything felt normal. Comfortable. Grounded in reality. If someone had told me that within the next hour I'd be standing barefoot on the side of a dead highway, whispering into a silent phone while something watched me from beyond the tree line, I would have laughed. I was just trying to get home. Just another night drive. Just another stretch of empty road. Nothing about that moment hinted at danger. Nothing suggested that I was about to become part of a story police still don't know how to explain. It started with the radio. Not cutting out completely, just stuttering. The podcast skipped backward a few seconds, replaying the same sentence twice before jumping forward again. I glanced at the dashboard, assuming I'd lost signal. That happened out here sometimes. Except my phone still showed full bars. I shrugged it off and switched to music. The first station was pure static. The second came through warped, voices stretched unnaturally slow before snapping back into place. The third didn't play anything at all. I turned the volume down and drove in silence. That's when I noticed the air had changed. The breeze coming through the cracked windows felt colder. Sharper. It carried a damp smell that didn't belong in the desert, like wet leaves after rain. I checked the temperature gauge. Normal. Still, goosebumps crept up my arms. I told myself it was just night air. A few miles passed. Then my GPS froze. The map stopped scrolling even though the car was moving. My position icon hung in place while the road rolled beneath my tires. I tapped the screen once, then again. Nothing. At the same time, the clock on my dashboard stopped updating. 11:38. It had been 11:38 for several minutes now. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. Great, I muttered. Electronics night. I reached over to reset the GPS when something flickered in my peripheral vision. Movement along the tree line. I looked. Nothing there. Just scrub brush and darkness. Still, my grip tightened on the steering wheel. I became aware of how quiet the highway had gotten. No passing cars. No distant engines. Even the wind noise seemed muted, like someone had turned the world's volume down. The road stretched empty in both directions. That's when the feeling started. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. Not from one direction. From everywhere. My shoulders tensed without me telling them to. My breathing slowed. My eyes kept darting to the mirrors, scanning the back seat, checking the sides of the road. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The headlights illuminated the same stretch of asphalt over and over again. Reflective markers flashed past at identical intervals. For a moment, it felt like I wasn't actually moving forward at all. Like the road was looping. I cleared my throat, suddenly aware of how loud it sounded inside the car. I told myself I was overthinking. Long drives mess with your head. Then I heard it. A soft click from the back seat. Not metallic. More like plastic shifting. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Empty. My equipment bag sat exactly where I'd left it. A mile later, the click came again. This time followed by something that sounded like slow breathing. I turned the music back on. Nothing played. The screen showed the track name, the timer ticking forward, but the speakers stayed silent. That pressure returned, creeping into my chest like the air was thickening. I rolled my windows up. The smell stayed. The cold stayed. I tried calling my sister, just to hear a familiar voice. The phone rang once, then went dead. No error message. No call failed notification. Just a blank screen. That's when I noticed something wrong with my mirrors. The road behind me looked darker than it should have been. My taillights barely reflected off anything. It was like the darkness was swallowing the beam. I slowed slightly. My heart began to beat harder. Then, far ahead, my headlights caught something standing in my lane. Not moving. Not reflective. Just a shape. I squinted, easing off the accelerator. Whatever it was didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't step aside. It just waited. And that's when I realized. This wasn't random. This wasn't mechanical failure. Something had noticed me. And it was finally done pretending. I slowed to a crawl. Whatever was standing in the road didn't move. My headlights washed over it, revealing a tall, narrow silhouette that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. No clothes. No visible features. Just a shape darker than the night around it. I stopped the car completely. My foot hovered over the brake, my pulse pounding in my ears. The shape tilted slightly. Not stepping forward. Not stepping back. Just, adjusting. Every instinct in my body screamed that this was wrong. I cracked my window and called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The words felt stupid the moment they left my mouth. The figure didn't respond. The air inside the car suddenly felt heavier, like pressure building before a storm. My chest tightened. My breath came shallow. That's when the radio turned on by itself. Static poured through the speakers, followed by a low tone that vibrated in my teeth. The dashboard lights dimmed. My GPS went black. The silhouette in the road began to change. Its outline softened, blurring at the edges. Something elongated from its sides, arms, maybe, but they bent at wrong angles, joints moving too smoothly, too quietly. I reached for my phone. No signal. My headlights flickered. The temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged the windshield. I tried putting the car in reverse. Nothing happened. The gear selector moved, but the engine didn't respond. The thing stepped forward. Not walking. Gliding. It crossed the center line without making a sound. As it came closer, I realized it didn't have a face. Where a face should have been was only darkness, like looking into a tunnel with no end. My heart slammed against my ribs. This isn't happening, I whispered. The pressure inside the car intensified, pushing against my ears. A high ringing filled my head. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. The figure stopped inches from my hood. The glass began to frost over from the inside. I could feel something probing at my thoughts, images flashing behind my eyes that weren't mine. Empty highways. Open doors. My own name whispered from everywhere at once. Then I heard breathing. Not from outside. From the back seat. I spun around. The seats were empty. But the indentation in the fabric was unmistakable. Something was sitting behind me. The car doors locked. All at once. The shadow outside lifted one elongated limb and placed it against the windshield. The glass didn't crack. Instead, darkness spread from the point of contact like ink in water. I screamed. I slammed my palm against the horn. No sound came out. The figure leaned closer, its hollow face inches from the glass. That's when I understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a random encounter. Whatever this was had waited for me to slow down. Had waited for me to stop. And now it was deciding what to do with me. My chest burned with panic. My vision tunneled. Somewhere deep in my body, survival finally kicked in. I threw the car into neutral and slammed the accelerator. The engine roared back to life. The figure shattered into shadow. I lurched forward, tires screaming as I sped past the place it had been standing. In the rearview mirror, I saw it reform in the road behind me. Watching. Not chasing. Just watching. And I knew, with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. I floored it. The speedometer climbed past 70. 80. 90. The road blurred beneath my headlights as adrenaline ripped through my body. My hands locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white, jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. I didn't look in the mirror again. I already knew it was still there. The air inside the car felt wrong, thick, charged, buzzing faintly like electricity. My ears rang. My heart hammered so violently I thought I might black out. The radio screamed static. Not random noise. Rhythmic. Pulsing. Like breathing. I veered around a curve too fast, tires squealing as my back end fishtailed. I barely corrected in time, nearly sending myself into the ditch. My headlights caught movement along the tree line, dark shapes slipping between trunks, pacing me. Not one. Multiple. My throat tightened. I mashed the accelerator harder. The dashboard lights flickered wildly. Warning symbols flashed, engine, traction control, battery, all lighting up at once. My GPS rebooted, froze, then displayed coordinates instead of directions. I didn't recognize them. Suddenly, the headlights dimmed. The road ahead dissolved into darkness. No, 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 I muttered, slamming the wheel. The engine coughed. Once. Twice. Then surged back, just long enough for me to spot a roadside turnout up ahead, the abandoned rest stop I'd passed dozens of times before. I swerved into it without thinking. Gravel exploded beneath my tires as I skidded to a stop beside the crumbling building. My door flew open before the car fully settled. I ran. I didn't grab my phone. Didn't grab my keys. I sprinted toward the restroom structure, lungs burning, feet slamming against concrete. Behind me, the night rippled, folding in on itself like heat waves. I could feel them moving. Not footsteps. Pressure. I slammed into the restroom door and shoved. Locked. Of course it was. A sound rose behind me, low, layered, like several voices trying to speak through one throat. I spun. The parking lot was wrong. The shadows were stretching toward me. Crawling across the ground like spilled ink. The air vibrated. The trees bent inward, branches bowing as if pulled by invisible gravity. One of the shapes emerged fully. Tall. Too tall. Its limbs unfolded slowly, joints bending backward. Its head tilted, hollow face fixed on me. My legs nearly gave out. I ran again. Around the building. Past rusted picnic tables. Toward nothing. My shoe caught on broken pavement and I went down hard, skin tearing, palms scraping raw. Pain flared, but fear swallowed it instantly. Something brushed my ankle. Ice cold. I kicked blindly and rolled onto my back. Above me, the sky pulsed. The stars blurred. The thing loomed overhead. Its presence crushed the air from my lungs. I crawled backward until my spine hit concrete steps. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ripped it out. No bars. But the flashlight worked. I flicked it on and aimed it straight at the shadow. The beam cut through the darkness. And the shape recoiled. Not violently. Cautiously. Like it remembered light. I staggered to my feet and bolted for my car. The shadows surged after me, closing the distance. I dove into the driver's seat and slammed the door just as something heavy hit the trunk. The car rocked. I shoved the key into the ignition. Nothing. Again. The windshield darkened from the edges inward. The breathing returned. Inside the car. I turned the flashlight toward the back seat. The upholstery was indented. Something was sitting there. The engine finally caught. I didn't think. I floored it. The car tore out of the turnout, gravel spraying as I burst back onto the highway. The rearview mirror showed the shapes unraveling behind me, dissolving into the dark. I didn't slow down for 40 miles. Not until I saw city lights. Not until I knew I wasn't alone anymore. And even then. My hands never stopped shaking. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the nearest hospital and sat in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes before I could convince my hands to let go of the steering wheel. My entire body felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me and never put back. Inside, they cleaned the scrapes on my palms and knees, checked my vitals, and asked if I'd been in an accident. I told them I almost was. They asked if someone had attacked me. I didn't know how to answer that. A highway patrol officer met me in a quiet room near the ER. He took notes while I tried to explain what had happened. The figure in the road. The shadows. The way my car had died. The pressure in the air. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said they'd send someone to check the turnout. They did. They found nothing. No skid marks. No footprints. No damage to the building. My car, however, told a different story. The mechanic said my battery terminals were scorched, like they'd been overloaded. The onboard computer had logged multiple system failures all at the exact same second. The trunk had a shallow dent that couldn't be explained by anything I'd hit on the road. The officer suggested maybe a deer had caused me to panic. I didn't argue. I just signed the paperwork and went home once the sun was up. For weeks afterward, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hollow face. I felt that pressure in my chest. I heard that layered breathing. I started leaving lights on at night. I stopped taking late service calls. I transferred to daytime shifts. I told myself it was over. Then strange things started happening. My phone would lose signal at random, even in the city. My radio would occasionally hiss with static, cutting out mid-song. Once, while sitting in traffic, my GPS flashed those same coordinates again for half a second before rebooting. I went back to the turnout in daylight. It looked ordinary. Sun-bleached concrete. Weeds pushing through cracks. Rusted picnic tables. Nothing that suggested anything unusual had ever happened there. But near the edge of the parking lot, I found something that made my stomach drop. A single footprint. Not human. Too long. Too narrow. Pressed deep into hardened dirt, as if something incredibly heavy had stood there for a very long time. I reported it. No one followed up. Months have passed since that night. I still drive for work, but I avoid that stretch of highway completely. I take longer routes. Busier roads. Places with cell towers and traffic and people. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone after sunset, my dashboard lights will dim for just a second. And every time that happens, I feel the same pressure in my chest. Like the air is remembering. Last week, I checked my car's system logs out of morbid curiosity. There was a timestamped error recorded at 12:14 a.m. on the night it happened. Location data attached. The same coordinates. I googled them. They don't point to the turnout. They don't point to the highway. They point to a place several miles into undeveloped desert. No roads. No buildings. Just empty land. And according to public records, no one has ever officially been reported missing there. But sometimes, late at night, when everything goes quiet and my phone loses signal for no reason at all, I swear I can hear breathing through the speakers. Slow. Layered. Patient. Like something that learned my route. And is waiting for me to drive it again.